Welcome to this lesson where we're going to take a look at rewrites. The type of rewrites we're going to take a look at are called contrasts. So, what is a contrast? A contrast is a sentence that compares and connects two sentences that are opposite in meaning. Okay, so it's going to have two parts. This sentence called contrast. Half of it is going to be saying this, the other half is going to be saying the opposite. Okay, that's what a contrast is. So the skills we are learning, you can be using them also in composition when connecting points. Okay, so if, for example, you are writing an argumentative composition and you want to express points that are opposite of each other, you can be using contrast. Okay, so usually most contrast involves words like despite, in spite of, although, but, however, no matter. These are not the only words that are used when constructing contrasts. Okay, but these are the ones that are used the most. Okay, so we're going to visit each of these. We see how they come in transformations or rewrites, and we see how to work with them. Okay, so the first we're going to look at is despite and in spite of. Okay, despite and in spite of. So both the two words despite and in spite mean the same thing, and that is regardless or no matter. So where you want to use no matter, you can use despite or in spite of. But note that despite is always alone, while in spite has of. Okay, so despite is always alone, while in spite has of at the end. Okay, so it's always in spite of. Okay, let's take a look at some examples. The first one is it rained at lunchtime, but sports day was still a great success. So we're talking about rains. Okay, so when there are rains, we expect sports day, which are carried outdoors, to be affected by the rains. Okay, but sports day was still a great success. So this is a contrast. There is the part of raining at lunchtime and the part of despite the rains, it was a great success. So how can we rewrite this using despite and in spite of? We're going to start with in spite of. So the question will be begin in spite of. Okay, so we're going to start with the first part of the contrast, okay, which is this part of raining at lunchtime. So in spite of the rains at lunchtime, in spite of the rains at lunchtime. So if you look here, it says it rained at lunchtime, but here it says in spite of the rains at lunchtime. Okay, so normally some of you, especially those who are good with mathematics, you would want a simple transformation where this way turns into this way turns into this. So when you're doing rewrites, always make sure that what you have written makes sense. Okay, so it rained at lunchtime in spite of the rains. Okay, in spite of the rains. So after in spite, most of the time we put a noun. Okay, a noun, the name of something. When you say rains, you are talking about we know what rains are. It's a name of something called rains. Okay, so in spite of the rains at lunchtime. Okay, so there's another way in which you can put a verb, which I'm going to show you, but for now let's learn how to use a noun. So here it's a verb. Rained, it's a verb. Okay, raining, it means something is happening here. Okay, there is rain falling, and rained, it means it has happened in the past. Okay, but when we say rains or rain, we're talking about the name of of something, so it's a noun. Okay, so you start with a noun. In spite of the rains at lunchtime, sports day was still a great success. In spite of the rains at lunchtime, sports day was still a great success. Then the other side of the contrast, it's easy. Sports day was still a great success. Sports day was still a great success. But the first part, that's where you have to be crafty to make sure that your English makes sense. Okay, so you get better by doing lots of questions of this form. Okay, what about using despite? Using despite, it's going to be the same. The only thing is the whole of in spite of is going to be replaced with despite, like so. Despite the rains at lunchtime, sports day was a great success. Let's take a look at more examples. The weather was cold, but we enjoyed our picnic. Okay, so this is a contrast because there's a part of the weather being cold and the picnic being enjoyed. Okay, implying that when the weather is cold, the chances of you enjoying your picnic are slim. Okay, so am I using big English? Okay, let me say that in simplified form. Okay, so what this sentence is trying to say is in situations where the weather is cold, then you are not expected to enjoy the picnic. Okay, so but in this situation, the weather was cold and the picnic was enjoyed. Okay, so how do we rewrite this using in spite of and despite? So if the question says begin in spite of, it will be in spite of the cold weather, we enjoyed our picnic. In spite of the cold weather, we enjoyed our picnic. So when we look at this part here, this is the part where you have to write properly. This other part is just copy. You just copy the way it is, okay? We enjoyed our picnic. We enjoyed our picnic. Also note that but, you don't have to write it here because but shows that you are contrasting what has been written here and what has been written here. Okay, so when you're using in spite of shows that what is coming is a contrast. Okay, you're going to contrast the first part, comma, then the second part. Okay, you're going to contrast the first part against the second part. Okay, so you don't have to write but here because but is the one that shows that this is a contrast, and here in spite of is the one that shows that this is a contrast. Okay, so if you write in spite of the cold weather, but we enjoyed our picnic, first, it doesn't make sense. Second, you are repeating or you are not using the words well because you have already shown that it's a contrast. Again, you are showing that the word is a I mean, you're using a word that shows that this sentence is a contrast. Okay, so coming back to this sentence, how do you turn it into this? So weather is a name of something. In this case, the atmospheric conditions. It can be rainy, it can be hot, it can be cold. Okay, so now the state in which that weather is, which is the adjective, okay, is cold. An adjective is a word like bad, good, cold, hot, a word that says more about the noun. Okay, so another example of such a construction of words can be um, the dog was bad. The dog was bad. So it will be on the noun here there's weather, but in the example there's dog. Then on the adjective here there's cold, and in the example there is bad. The dog was bad. Okay, I think you have an idea of what a noun and what an adjective is. In the example, the dog is the noun and the bad is the adjective. Okay, so when you are transforming now, rewriting, so to speak, when you start in spite of, okay, the cold weather, adjective noun. Okay, this adjective is saying how the weather was. Okay, in spite of the cold weather, we enjoyed our picnic. Okay. Another way in which we can write this is like this: in spite of noun being adjective. Okay, in spite of course, there's supposed to be a word there here, so it's supposed to be in spite of the weather being cold. Okay, so when you write it like this, there should always be being here between the adjective and, I mean, between the noun and the adjective. So in spite of the weather being cold, if it was the example of the dog that was bad, it could have been in spite of the dog being bad. Okay, so this is another way in which you can write it. In spite of the weather being cold, we enjoyed our picnic. Using despite, it will be the same. We're just going to replace in spite of with despite, like this. Despite the cold weather, we enjoyed our picnic. Or despite the weather being cold, we enjoyed our picnic. Okay, let's take a look at another example. She's busy with work, but she always finds time for her hobbies. She's busy with work, but she always finds time for her hobbies. So for those who don't know what hobbies are, hobbies things you do because you enjoy them. It can be playing, maybe playing a guitar, playing football, painting. You can be working, but you are able to do this. You can be doing schoolwork, but you're able to do these other things. So these things which you do just for fun are called hobbies. Okay, so she's busy with work, but she always finds time for hobbies. So using in spite, it's going to be in spite of her. So here, in spite of, she becomes her. Okay, in spite of her being, okay, the her part is the noun. Okay, it's called the pronoun, but it acts as a noun. Okay, so instead of her name, since we don't know her name, so we're just going to put her. So in spite of her, if it was a male, we could have written his. If it was an animal or something, we could have written its. Okay, in spite of her being busy, busy is the adjective. So in spite of her being busy with work, okay, in spite of her being busy with work, she always finds time for her hobbies. Okay, using despite, it will be despite her being busy with work, she always finds time for her hobbies. So these are the way we have written them. We've written them like the way we did here and here, where we're using being between a noun and an adjective. Okay, even here between where the noun should be and an adjective. Okay, so there are some using this pattern for despite the cold weather. Can it work here? Despite, it can be difficult. Yeah, so sometimes it's on this which works, the one for being. Okay, but there are times when this one also is better. Okay, so the point is know both. Okay, okay, we continue. So the other ways that I use to show contrast, it's although and even though. So although and even though mean the same thing. Okay, so here's an example. He was tired, he managed to win the race. He was tired, he managed to win the race. So when you want to write although, these two sentences, of course, can be combined into one by using although, where we start with although, like so. Although he was tired, comma, although he was tired, comma, where there's full stop, you put a comma, then you write what is on the other side. He managed to win the race. Although he was tired, comma, he managed to win the race. So although and even though are simpler as compared to despite and in spite of. Okay, another one, she studied hard, but she couldn't pass the exam. Okay, so using even though, it will be even though she studied hard, comma, she couldn't pass the exams. We can't use but because we're using even though. So but is a shows contrast. So if when we're using even though, we don't have to include but here. So you can't write even though she studied hard, but she couldn't pass the exams. No, that's not grammatically correct. Okay, so you just write even though she studied hard, she couldn't pass the exams. Then you have gotten rid of but. Okay, so here you can put although, it's the same thing. Even here you can put even though, it's the same thing. We go to however. Okay, so she studied hard, but she couldn't pass the exams. She studied hard, but she couldn't pass the exams. Remember, these contrasts, these words that connect two sentences, use them when you're writing your composition so that you're able to connect points that are going to be given to you. Okay, she studied hard, but she couldn't pass the exams. Okay, how can we write this using however? So where there's but is where we're going to put however. Okay, but sometimes we can even put however at the start of a sentence. But for these examples, we're going to take a look. We're going to be putting however here. Later, we're going to see how to put it at the start of a sentence. So it's going to be, the question is use however. So the answer is she studied hard, okay, comma, then but. After but, you have to, but we're going to replace it with however. But we're going to replace it with however. At the end of however, you have to put a comma. Don't forget this when you're writing a composition. At the end of however, put a comma. She studied hard, however, she couldn't pass the exams. Okay? Another one, he is a talented musician, but he doesn't perform in public. He is a talented musician, but he doesn't perform in public. So use however. So it's going to be, he is a talented musician, however, comma, he doesn't perform in public. Okay, so he's a talented musician, comma, however, comma, he doesn't perform in public. So next we look at however and no matter. In this case, we're going to take a look at however when used as at the beginning of a sentence. Here's an example. The weather was unfavorable, but the event went on smoothly. Okay, so on the left side, we have the weather, which was not favorable. Okay, and we don't expect an event to go smoothly, but it went on smoothly. Okay, so rewriting this using our however, of course, you just need to work on this part, the part of the first part of the sentence, not the other side, the opposite side, or the side that says the opposite. Okay, so writing this starting with however, it will be however the unfavorable weather. So noun, adjective. So you are going to have however, then after the adjective, noun. However, the unfavorable weather, the event went on smoothly. If you still don't understand what an adjective is, if you can comment in the comment section, or if you are my student, when you're done watching, just let me know. Okay, so however the unfavorable weather, the event went on smoothly. So however, after however, it should be followed by the, then after there should be the adjective, this one, then the noun. Okay, using no matter, it will be the same. It's just that where there's however, you put no matter. No matter the unfavorable weather, the event went on smoothly. Another example, the team faced a tough opponent, but they emerged victorious. The team faced the tough opponent, but they emerged victorious. Okay, I'm sure it's supposed to be victoriously here, not victorious. Okay, so to begin with, however, it will be, however, the tough opponent, the team emerged victorious. Or, however, the tough opponent they faced, the team emerged victoriously. However, the tough opponent they faced, the team emerged victoriously. Using no matter, it will be no matter the tough opponent they faced, the team emerged victoriously. Okay. Then there are other strange ones, okay, which don't follow pattern. You just have to use your ability to, the way you know English. Okay, what about this one? Kanyama is dirty, but it is very beautiful. Kanyama is dirty, but it is very beautiful. Okay, so they want you to write this using, beginning with dirty. They want you to rewrite this beginning with dirty. Think about it. How can you rewrite it? So it's going to be dirty is Kanyama, but it is very beautiful. Dirty is Kanyama, but it is very beautiful. Okay? Another one. Black Panther was a long movie, but I enjoyed it. Black Panther was a long movie, but I enjoyed it. They want you to start with a long. A long. Okay? So how do you transform it starting with a long? Okay? So it's simple. You're going to start with a long movie, Black Panther was, but I enjoyed it. Look at the pattern. Let's go back. Kanyama is dirty, but it is very beautiful. Dirty is Kanyama, but it is very beautiful. Black Panther was a long movie, but I enjoyed it. A long movie, Black Panther was, I enjoyed it. Okay? Or a long movie was Black Panther, but I enjoyed it. Okay? Always when you're doing it, right, when you do this mathematics kind of transforming, always try to see if it makes sense. Read through to see if the English makes sense. Okay? Okay, a few more. Although Zambia seems dry, it is very wet. Although Zambia seems dry, it is very wet. So a question can come where it says end with seems. End with seems. Okay? So they want you to rewrite such that you end this with seems. So there are two things here which are contrasting. First, Zambia seems to be dry, but it is very wet. Okay? So we're going to write it like this. Zambia is not as dry as it seems. Zambia is not as dry as it seems. This implies that Zambia is wet as compared to how it seems, because it seems dry. So Zambia is not as dry as it seems. Okay? Another one. Although she appears fat, she is very slim. Although she appears fat, she is very slim. So end with appears. End with appears. Okay. So it will be, she is not as fat as she appears. She is not as fat as she appears. Meaning that she's not she's slim, in short, not like the way she appears. So this marks the end of contrast. Hope you have enjoyed. I'll see you in the next lesson.